Good morning. This is Ray Anderson. Welcome to another episode of Good Hearted Leadership. You know, I've always enjoyed this, and one of the things that really makes it meaningful to me is that sustainability is not only about a business, which is important, but how do we sustain ourselves? How do we sustain our communities? How do we sustain our businesses and our families? And ultimately, how do we sustain the planet? You know, how do we preserve it for the next generation? Today, I've got the pleasure of working with somebody that I've gotten to know well over the past 8 years, and he's going to talk about how he's been able to sustain his business, now moving into the third generation. And so I'm really excited to be able to not only introduce, but to tell you that we've changed relationships, and I may have something to announce here later. In the meantime, let me introduce Joey Sanchez. Joey.
Hey, Ray.
It's a pleasure.
It's nice to be with you here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. And, you know, you and I have had the chance to work together for some time. What I try to do when we talk about these things, and one of the things that I'm excited about with you is that, you know, you've purposely designed a business that's going beyond you. But tell us a little bit about the start of all this, because basically you've been at this for a long time, and it didn't start with you, did it?
No, I didn't.
Well, tell me a little bit about the past, if you don't mind.
Sure. You know, my dad started. Well, our business is originally as a tax accountant.
Okay.
Right. My dad started in 1964 doing taxes.
Okay.
And it was really basic. It was simple. You know, the first pioneer is always the one that has to pave that road.
Right.
And so his first experience was really working out of a supermarket with a table and a chair, and those, you know, the patrons that were actually shopping at the time, you know, he would actually prepare their taxes and do it by hand.
So he was working at the grocery store at the time?
He wasn't working at the grocery store. He was independent, but they'd give him a table and he'd be there in the corner.
Really?
And he'd prepare taxes right then and there, you know, for the people that were shopping.
Oh, that's so cool.
So, you know, and he grew from there, you know, to a point where he had his own business and his own place of real estate where, you know, customers would come to to our shop and prepare their taxes, and he grew quite a following.
Right. Well, tell me, you know, because basically, you know, that was a kind of inauspicious start, but, you know, most businesses start that way. How did Joey get involved in this? And when did that all happen?
Yeah. Well, like any father, you know, you want your kids to follow in your footsteps, right? But what I found is that sometimes the business isn't big enough for the whole family.
Right.
Yeah, so when you start off and you're that 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old teenager, it's easy to pay for your kids. It's easy to afford them to work within your organization, right? But as they grow and the business starts to grow, now you're divvying up the business 2, 3, 4 different ways.
Well, tell me a little bit about that, because it's not just you. How many kids are in the family, and how did your dad deal with that?
So my dad had 4 boys. Actually, my mom had 4 boys, and my dad helped raise those four boys, right? And 2 of his boys, his oldest son and myself, the youngest, decided that they wanted to get into the family business, into tax accounting and bookkeeping. And that was our trade for years. And so it sustained my father very well. You know, he loved the working 4 or 5 months out of the year, and then, you know, being able to have a bunch of time off in between. You know, it was feast and famine type of thing, where in December he was always saying, boy, I can't wait for that income tax to start over again in January, right? But that was his motto. That was something that he liked doing. That was his passion. He was a people person. He liked consulting. He liked sitting behind the desk and working with his clients and solving problems. It was all about solving problems.
I've gotten to know you fairly well, and one of the things that I think, tell me a little bit about what things you took from your dad that you kind of migrated into the business and stayed with you, and those that you kind of said, you know, I'm going to take a little different path.
Well, there's a couple of things, right? One is the family business atmosphere, the culture, and part of that philosophy.
Okay.
Right. That was key. The thing that I had to grow beyond my dad was investing in our people, right, in our employees, and understanding that took me a little bit of time. When you're a tax accountant, it's all about you. You're doing the consultation, right? And you're the one that's doing and solving the problem, not your employees. But as you start to grow, and if you want to grow beyond yourself, it's important for you to train your employees, right? Who's going to be an extension of you, right? And how are they going to act, and how are they going to be perceived, right? So your people are your number one component. Your second component is your customer. Right? How are you going to reach your customers? How's your customer going to perceive you? Right.
You know, given that you've kind of made those lessons along the way, what I heard you say though is that as the business grew, it wasn't enough to sustain, the family. How did you deal with that, and how did you migrate out of it? Because as I understood it, you kept that tax accounting background, but it wasn't the direction in which you ultimately went.
No, it wasn't, because I understood that the industry was changing. Income tax, accounting. Back in the day, it was one of those things where you had your bookkeeper in house, right? Or you went to your accountant to prepare your taxes. Nowadays, you have TurboTax and you have QuickBooks, and the landscape has changed. And with that, I saw the writing on the wall, and I said we needed to reinvent ourselves and take our experience, because we felt that the business owner out there was somebody that would be a little bit more difficult to adhere to QuickBooks or taxes of doing it themselves. That they still needed the strategy and the structure. They needed the culture and the systems to be implemented and to be taught. So that was something that we looked to perfect to do.
So was this all in taxation, or did you migrate out of the taxation business and get into something different as you were moving forward? Again, as I understood it, it's not that you didn't want to stay with your father. In fact, the Corporate Advocate is still very much alive.
Correct.
But it's a very different organization today than it was when it was birthed by your dad in the Superstore.
It is. And I think what happened, Ray, is when we hyper-focused into an area that we thought was our direction. Right. And we became committed. Right. Because if it wasn't taxes, it wasn't accounting, it wasn't tax planning, it was asset protection, it was company compliances, all these different areas we made money on, right? But we never made enough money in any one given area. So what we decided to do is to hyper-focus in that one area, build a plan, believe in the plan, and implement the plan, right? And we were committed to that plan, even though when we thought it was dire straight, it was meek, and it was difficult. We just said, hey, we need to stomach through this and stick it out. And what we did is we went into the HR business. Right, payroll, insurance, workers' compensation, loss control, safety, risk management, and what we did is we took our background, right, our tax, accounting, our analysis background, and we used that in order to get clients and market towards clients to bring them an end solution that was somebody other than ourselves. So we became a broker of our own service. Right? So what we felt is that it was easier for us to sell the service and educate the service than for us to do the service. That there were other organizations that were more efficient, could price it competitively, but they were willing to pay an organization like ourselves in order for us to bring them that business.
So literally what you did is you migrated from doing to marketing and selling on behalf of other people.
That's correct.
Wow. The question that kind of intrigues me at this point is that when all this was going on, was this a decision that you made, that your dad made, or that you all made together? Tell me a little bit about how you migrated out to become a broker.
Well, I have to take a couple steps back, and that is that when the family business became difficult, and Dad was in charge of his own kingdom, his own business, right? But he still saw his kids, who were adults at the time, married and kids, still as his teenage kids, and he still wanted to pay him as his teenage kids, right? And that's really all the business could really support, and make. And at that time, my brother and I, Phil, decided to make a conscious effort to go out on our own. Right. And when we went on our own, it was up to us to be in charge of our own domain, our own castle, so to speak, and our own business. And so through his foundation, his knowledge, and his backing, he helped us get off the ground.
Really? Cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And we grew to a successful company. And Dad was by himself. So probably 2006, 2005, we told Dad, sell your business and come work for us. So my dad was so proud. He says, you know what? I work for my kids. So when he came in as a third partner. Right? And at that time, the economy was starting to slip. And at that time, we reinvented ourselves together. And we just said, hey, we're going to do things differently. We're going to focus, and we're going to go after one line of business, and we're going to be the best. That was the key, is that we weren't afraid of hard work. We weren't afraid of researching. We weren't afraid of rolling up our sleeves. But the bottom line is that it was hard work. And we were committed, and we put in the long hours. And we always did put in the long hours, but we put it in fragments of so many different segments that the long hours weren't good enough for just that one segment. So when we hyper-focused,
it kind of spread you out so thinly.
Exactly. But when we hyper-focused, we became very good at it. And I think our clients saw us as very knowledgeable and understanding, and our consulting background just helped us bridge that gap, right, where our clients said, this is really foreign to us. I don't understand insurance. I don't understand accounting. I don't understand why am I paying so much in taxes. So when we brought them in, it was a natural for us. It was a natural to say, hey, relax, sit down, let me explain it. I'm going to explain it the way you want to hear it.
Okay, cool. Cool. So in other words, it was an attempt on your part. And again, this is a new model. This is the brokering model in which your purpose was to kind of educate, build trust, and then get the right resources in to make sure this would happen in a way that worked for them. Let's fast forward a little bit to the recession. What happened?
The recession, most of our business was all in taxes, and it was also in the payroll business, right? In taxes, our largest concentration was real estate brokers and mortgage brokers, and then in the bookkeeping and accounting and payroll service, it was in the new construction. Right. And so when the economy fell, I figured I had it all covered. I got one industry over here and another industry over here.
That's right.
I didn't know that the two
I've diversified my assets. I'm cool.
I'm cool. I didn't know that the two industries were married together at the hip. And so when the economy fell and there was no new construction and no new mortgages, well then I lost both of it, and actually we lost close to 90% of all our business all at one time, just like that.
No, it's funny, looking back, and I use the word funny very loosely here, but it astounded me when that happened, how quickly the things that were related to construction just disappeared. As an example, all those guys that were making large toys like RVs, etc. I mean, in 6 months they were gone. It was absolutely one of the most astounding things. I've had the experience of living through, and I'm sure you've had the same thing. The neat thing about this, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk a little bit about this, but the issue that I think is really important, Joey, is the fact that underneath all this, even with the recession, you had a culture that you were trying to develop. There was a common core there that started with your dad. Am I right in that? Tell me a little bit about that, and what enabled you to weather through that and to where you are today? Because that's kind of where we're going, and I'm trying to help people understand how you took from the ashes and created something that's pretty phenomenal.
I guess the only thing I could say is that through my career, I've been doing this for 35 years, and my dad doing it, probably 18 years before that time. And that was, we've had all our challenges of ups and downs, but we never panicked. That was part of our culture, is that you don't panic. You just have to take a step back, take a deep breath, and then you have to reorganize and you have to rethink your process and where you're going, and then dive back in again. It's not put your head in the sand and hope that it's going to go away. It's, I guess I need to work even harder. If I have to work 10 hours, if it's 12 hours or 14 hours, if I have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, right, in order to get my day started, because I know that by 8 o'clock I'm going to be working with my employees so that they can grow, that they can be better. But if I don't have time for myself, I guess I'm going to have to get up a little bit earlier in order to make that time so that I can become educated and I can take myself to the next level. So that's the one thing that I can say that I took away from my dad, is that don't panic.
Right. And then second thing, it seems like discipline, because the truth is that people who dabble in this stuff don't succeed. So you took your discipline, you took your hard work, and you didn't panic, and you shifted gears.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit how you made it through that challenge, and I want to start moving now toward the direction where you are today. I mean, you picked up another partner, and you also began to migrate this to another generation. In other words, you took the cultural things you learned from your father, and you're now moving them into another generation. Give me a little backstory on that.
Well, I'll tell you, the third generation is running strong, and they are prepared. And the reason why they're prepared is because I took the same model my dad did, and that is you have to start at the bottom. You got to start with the paper clips. You got to start with the filing. You got to start with the delivery. You got to start with taking out the trash. Right? You got to do all the things that any other employee has to do. And you need to learn it from the ground floor up. Because if you want to lead, you need to know. Right? You have to be prepared to understand your employees and what they're going through. Right? So for us, it was always about training, even with our family members. With my son Nicholas and my daughter Jessica, right, and Ray's son Chris. It was about starting them at the bottom and working with them so that they can be proficient and get to a level of expertise that we feel comfortable with. And are they there? No, it's a work in progress. It's always a work in progress.
I'm still a work in progress.
And I think I am a work in progress, right?
That's right.
I think it's probably a goal I'll never reach, which is perfect. Right? I'm looking for, I am looking just like everybody else for that magic nugget that I can replicate day in, day out.
Right.
All right? And I think whenever...
It's generating cash flow for you.
Exactly. Well, it's got to generate cash flow. No cash flow, I'm in the wrong business, right? So we're always looking for that perfection. That perfect system that you can replicate, so that you can generate your cash flow.
One of the things that I want you to address a little bit, because part of creating a sustainable business is having the right people involved. Tell us a little bit about how you got started with Ray, because one of the biggest dangers of companies as they move forward is creating a partnership that works, because partnerships are kind of like marriages. There's a lot of good in them, but there's a lot of bad and ugly at the same time. Tell me a little bit about that and how you happen to move that forward, because ultimately that's been kind of a fulcrum for you.
So the way that transpired is that when the economy hit and I lost 90% of my business, I had a fellow friend that I was a vendor that I was doing business with, and he lost considerable business. But the one thing he gave me was an opportunity. He said, come in with my office, right, and you can have my clients, and we can grow together. And we did that. But here's one thing. What made it work is that our culture and our philosophy were in tune. the way we acted, the way we spoke to each other, the way we communicated, and our desires were in sync. We were both willing to put in hard work. There wasn't one person doing less than the other. We were both willing to sacrifice, and that was the key. Is that when you don't have much, and you can sacrifice, and you can make it through that rough time.
Right.
It's that much easier when when the going is good, right? And so our business today is successful, is thriving, and our relationship is no different than the relationship when we first started and we were struggling and we were rubbing two nickels together. Right. Because that's what we say, right? Yeah. When we can rub two nickels together when we didn't have anything, it's that much easier. Right. And so that really hones in on our culture and our relationship that we have with each other. It's a mutual respect. Right. Do we do the exact same thing? Absolutely not. Ray has some strengths that I don't have, and then I have some strength that Ray doesn't have, but we understand how to mesh it together and work it together so that we're not stepping on each other's toes. And that's what allowed us to grow. We worked as a team. We literally worked as a team, hand in hand. Probably worked with him more than I did my wife, in regards to a relationship is concerned. And I spent more time with him. And it was a great thing.
Well, as we were talking about, Joy, that you got that moral compass from your dad, and what I wanted to kind of, as we wrap this up, is talk a little bit about what good-hearted leadership means to you personally and how you've been able to apply it inside this organization to surround yourself by all these millennials who seem to share those same traits.
Well, good-hearted leadership means to me is becoming a good leader, where people want to follow. Right. And part of that goes into my philosophy, right, that your employees have to buy into. Part of that is your culture and how you act and who you surround yourself with, right? And it's the next part is desire. Right. You have to have a desire to move forward and get out of the status quo. I call it disruptive innovation. It's about taking something and making it better, and not being complacent because it is. No, what else? What's different? How can you make it better? Right? And so part of the good-hearted leadership for me, I'm still in development. I'm still learning, and as I learn, I teach, because I want my team to be at my level. I don't want to be above them. I want them to be at my level. So if they're an extension of me, they need to be as good as I am. And if they can't get there, I need to help them get there. That's my job. That's my job as a leader. So they will follow. Right,
and it's kind of your job as a CEO. One of the things that I think, you've been able to do is you think you can train them how to find those niches inside a business which you've been so good at. Is that something that's trainable, or is that something that's innate?
No, it is trainable.
Okay, all right.
And the reason why it's trainable is allowing them to discover and to think outside the box. I don't restrict it. I want their input. I want to know what they're thinking, because what they're thinking is a different aspect than mine. And I'm willing to accept people's opinions and directions. I may not always take their direction, right? And sometimes it's been good for me, and at other times it's been bad because they've had great ideas. And I've had to come back and fall back and say, you know what? You did have a good idea. Now I'm going to implement it. I've taken the wrong path, and I'm going to come back, and I'm okay to own up with that. And I think being a good leader is being able to be truthful to yourself and to your employees. Being real. When your employees understand that you are a regular person like everybody else, and that you're looking for the same goals that they are, which is to be successful, right? Then they're willing to follow.
And I think, to your point, we're what I believe is that, whenever I work inside of an organization, I always come in with the idea that, the organization is bigger than you and I are. So it isn't for me reporting to a CEO, it's for us reporting together to what do we do to build this organization. And what I'd like to do is close with that. And give me, if you had an ideal image of your business, where do you see it in 10 years? And how do you see it evolving from here so that that good-hearted leadership remains the core, but it grows as it moves forward?
You know, I think that you said it in one word, and that is to go beyond me. That's what I'm looking for. Where it's going to go, I don't know, but I know it's going to continue to grow. Because the people that I have as my team are an extension of me. And all I want to do is think outside the box, right? And see how I can make it work. And I know that if my team continues to do that, they will always be ahead of the curve. They'll be ahead of the game. They'll be ahead of their competition, right? Sometimes you can't get too far ahead, right? Because you're making that path yourselves, and then everybody else follows, right? I don't want to be at the head of the train. I want to be, you know, I want to be driving the train. I don't want to necessarily be ahead of the train, right?
Right. No,
and so that you know, you're constantly innovating, because in today's world it's changing so quick that you have to be in tuned, and you have to be stay with it. Right.
And I think that's a good way to summarize this. Joey, it's been a pleasure as usual. I always enjoy talking to you.
All right, great, thank you.
And I want to thank those of you who listen. That good-hearted leadership, in my mind, has always been the capacity to be able to develop those people around you. And as Jim Collins once said, you know, level 5 leaders, the people who are more interested in where the organization's going than their own egos, are the ones who are capable of taking it to a level that other people would find impossible. And Joey's organization here is one of those. I invite you to join us for another episode in the coming months. We're always looking for people who you think embody the concepts of good-hearted leadership and bring it to the marketplace. Thank you very much.